Where were you when the first shot was fired? That question haunted me more than the echo of the gun itself. It wasn't just the crack of a rifle, it was the sound of a world breaking. I was on my porch, coffee mug in hand, half listening to the rustle of wind through the tall grass, when the blast tore through the morning. A thunderclap of violence in a place that should have been peace. One shot, one scream, my son's scream. And in that moment, everything changed. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. The mug dropped from my hand and shattered on the wood floor. I was running before my brain could even register what was happening. Down the dirt path, boots pounding like war drums, past the stables, through the wild grass we hadn't mowed in weeks. And then I saw him. Luke. 10 years old. Kneeling in the clearing by the fence, arms wrapped around something small and lifeless. His screams cut the air sharper than any bullet. They shot her. They shot Daisy. I dropped to my knees beside him, heart in my throat, hands trembling as I reached for her. Daisy's coat, white and brown patches we'd brushed 100 times, was soaked in blood. Her eyes were open but vacant, staring into nothing. I pressed my hand to her side. No breath. No heartbeat. Nothing but stillness. She wasn't just a horse. She was Luke's partner, his therapy animal, his light. Behind the grief, rage started to rise. And then I saw them, 2 men in camouflage, rifles slung over their shoulders like this was a normal Saturday outing. They stepped casually through a section of our fence that had been broken clean through. One of them actually laughed. As if this was funny. As if the blood on the grass was some kind of joke. You better not be touching our deer, the taller one shouted. Deer? My hands clenched into fists. I stood up, my voice low and shaking with fury. That's no deer. That's my son's horse. What the hell are you doing on my land? They didn't even flinch. The shorter one gave a half-hearted shrug. She ran into our line of sight. Some lady from the HOA said it was okay. My heart stopped. HOA. Our land was private, fenced, and miles outside the HOA's jurisdiction. What kind of lunatic would tell armed strangers they could hunt here? She said it was community land, the hunter added, leaning lazily on his rifle. Open range or some shit. Behind me, Luke let out another broken cry. I turned, knelt beside him again, pulling him into my arms. He was shaking so hard I could feel his little ribs rattling. She was gonna perform with me, Dad, he sobbed into my chest. At the school show next month. We practiced every day. Every day. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Every part of me was spiraling between grief and fury. And that's when I saw her. Standing behind the hunters, arms folded like some queen surveying her kingdom, was Karen. Bright pink cardigan. Oversized sun hat. HOA royalty in her full delusional glory. She didn't even look upset. She looked annoyed. Like we'd ruined her picnic. I stood, my voice flat. You let them in? Karen tilted her head, not a flicker of remorse on her face. This land wasn't being used properly. It's full of weeds. We thought it would be a nice gesture for the community. We. She said we. This is my land, I said, barely holding back the storm inside. My son's horse just died because of your gesture. She scoffed. Scoffed. It was just a pony. You people are always so sensitive. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Say that again. She paused for a second, probably realizing she'd gone too far, but her pride didn't let her back down. It was just a pony, she repeated. Good. Now I had her. I turned and carried Luke back toward the house. My wife Melissa was on the porch, pale, lips trembling. The sheriff's on the way, she whispered. Luke won't stop crying. I nodded. My jaw was locked so tight I could barely speak. They're going to pay, I said. Every last one of them. But the hunters? Gone. By the time the sheriff arrived, they had vanished down the hill and into the woods. Karen stood firm. I don't know those men, she said, face a portrait of innocence. I certainly didn't give them any gate code. But she didn't know I had the footage. Her voice, her words. It was just a pony. Caught crystal clear on audio. That night, Luke didn't speak. He sat in his room clutching a photo of Daisy. Melissa and I stayed by his side, silent. What do you say to a child who just watched his best friend bleed out in the dirt? Later, the phone rang. It was Officer Ray, a sheriff's deputy we'd known for years. Mr. Harding, he said, you're not going to believe what we just found. Found? I asked. There's something in the woods. You want to come down to the station first thing in the morning. Bring any footage you have. What did you find? A pause. Let's just say those hunters might be involved in more than just trespassing. When I hung up, I just sat there. Melissa was watching me from the hallway. What's going on? I don't know, I said. But it's bigger than we thought. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed the morning again and again. The sound of the gun. Luke's scream. Karen's smug face. I wasn't just furious, I was changed. Whatever piece we'd found on this ranch, it was gone. And I wasn't going to let that go unanswered. You ever think you've done everything right, moved your family to a place with space and nature and safety, only to have someone like her inject herself into your world like a virus? We didn't join the HOA. We weren't even close enough to their gates. But Karen? Karen didn't need boundaries. She was the boundary. And now she'd crossed ours. So again I ask, where were you when the first shot was fired? Were you sipping coffee on a quiet porch like I was? Or were you already under siege and didn't know it yet? Because sometimes war doesn't start with soldiers. It starts with HOA maps, pastel hats, and a smile that hides a weapon. And that morning, on the dirt of my pasture, war had found us. The morning after the shooting, the sky was overcast, low-hanging clouds casting a gray film over the ranch like a shroud of mourning. I woke up to silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, waiting kind. Melissa was already in the kitchen, staring out the window with a cup of untouched coffee in her hands. Luke hadn't come out of his room. His door was shut, the same photo of Daisy on his nightstand catching the little bit of light that managed to seep through the blinds. I knew I had to leave, had to go to the sheriff's office, but every bone in my body resisted walking away from them again. Still, I slipped the flash drive into my jacket pocket, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The ride to the station was long, but not because of the distance, because of what I replayed over and over in my head. Karen's voice. That laugh from the hunter. The way Luke's knees had sunk into the blood-stained grass like he was trying to anchor himself in a world that had just cracked in half. Officer Ray met me in the back room, a large map of the surrounding properties pinned to the wall and dotted with red thumbtacks. We've been tracking some poachers, he said without even looking up. But we didn't know how close to home they'd gotten. He pointed to a still frame from the drone footage I had sent in the night before. 2 men, one holding a cooler, were seen moving near the edge of our western fence line, just after the time of the incident. Ray clicked on another photo, a blurry freeze frame showing one of them lifting a shovel. They buried something, he said. We dug it up this morning. He opened a file folder, revealing photos of the contents. A red and white cooler. Inside it a bundle of laminated maps and a sheet of printed permits labeled HOA Wildlife Access Program, all signed with Karen Whitman's name. My stomach dropped. She made fake permits? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Ray nodded. And distributed them. We've already confirmed at least 6 other people used them this season. Some of them paid for access. Paid? I asked. How much? Anywhere from 200 to a few thousand, depending on the tier of access, he said, using air quotes. And that's not all. One of the names on the list is tied to a bigger poaching investigation. These aren't weekend hunters. They're organized. Selling game meat out of state. Crossing borders. That makes this federal. I felt like the floor tilted under me. What had started as a neighbor's overreach was quickly revealing itself as a web of deceit and criminality. Karen's in deeper than she knows, Ray said. But we'll need everything, maps, gate footage, voice recordings. I nodded. I have her admitting it. On video. She said it was just a pony. Ray's jaw tightened. That's more than enough to start. I left the station with fire in my chest. This wasn't just about trespassing or Daisy anymore. This was about invasion, of our lives, our land, our peace. Melissa met me at the door when I got back. She didn't ask what they said. She just looked at me and whispered, Luke hasn't eaten. I walked to the porch and found him there, sitting on the steps with the saddle he used to strap onto Daisy's back. He was brushing it with slow, quiet strokes, like if he moved too fast, she might really disappear. We're building a memorial, I said gently. He didn't look up, but he nodded. Can I help? He asked after a moment. Of course, I said. She was yours. That weekend, we built it together. A white wooden archway, simple but sturdy, with her name in blue across the top. We used leftover cedar posts from when we built the barn, placed the saddle on a wooden brace, and surrounded it with flowers. Luke picked a smooth stone from the creek and placed it at the base. It's her thinking rock, he said. She always stood by me when I sat there to read. The neighbors came by. Not the HOA ones, the real neighbors. Mr. Clay brought iced tea and a promise to help mend the fence. The Monroe twins made drawings of Daisy and hung them from the archway with clothespins. It was the first time since the shooting that Luke smiled, even if just for a second. But the peace didn't last. Monday morning, a white Lexus SUV pulled up to our gate. Karen stepped out in her pastel sun hat, trailing a man in a cheap suit with a leather briefcase. Melissa walked out first. What do you want, Karen? She asked. Karen didn't respond. She looked around, surveying the property like she was appraising it for sale. The man with her cleared his throat. I'm Harold Grayson, legal representative for the Hillside View HOA. We've come to inform you that your property has been flagged for non-compliance. Non-compliance with what? I asked, stepping out. Karen finally spoke. The open land on the southern end of your ranch is considered shared green space. You've placed a structure there without HOA approval. You mean the memorial? I asked. The one for the horse your hunters killed? Karen raised her sunglasses. Rules are rules. That phrase again. Her weapon of choice. Grayson opened his briefcase and handed me a stack of papers. According to these amended boundaries. Amended by who? I snapped. He paused. The HOA Development Committee. So you just drew new lines? Claimed our land was yours? He swallowed hard. Let's not escalate things. I stepped forward. You already escalated things when your people walked in with guns and killed something my son loved. Karen adjusted her scarf. This isn't over, she muttered. Melissa lifted her phone, camera rolling. You're trespassing again, Karen. And you just threatened us. On tape. They left, but the tension stayed. That night, a neighbor named Stephanie, who used to be on the HOA board, sent us an email. I have proof, it read. Emails. She bribed the board to redraw the property lines. She forced me out when I refused. I looked at Melissa. We've got her, I said. But I was wrong. Because 3 nights later, someone set fire to Daisy's memorial. The flames woke us up. Smoke was thick in the hallway. I grabbed Luke, Melissa ran for the garden hose, and we stumbled into the yard barefoot and breathless. The archway was already collapsing. The saddle was gone, just a blackened outline of what used to be joy. By the time the fire truck arrived, it was ashes. Luke sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, shivering. Why do they hate us so much? He asked. Why would someone do this? I knelt beside him, heartbreaking. I don't know, buddy. But I promise, we won't let them win. The next morning, the sheriff's office cordoned off the area. Officer Ray found the melted base of a plastic gasoline can. Arson. Deliberate. Our surveillance camera had caught someone under a hood. But not just anyone. Designer boots. Pink scarf. Karen. We showed Ray. She's cooked, he said. But with her lawyers, it won't be easy. She torched a child's memorial, Melissa said. Then let her try to explain the emails, I added. And for the first time, Ray smiled. You've got more than a case, he said. You've got a storm. And I think it's time she got caught in it. The ash from Daisy's burned memorial still lingered in the air when we got the letter. Certified mail, stiff envelope, cold font. It wasn't just another HOA warning, it was a direct attack. A formal complaint had been filed, citing unauthorized business activity on HOA-designated grounds. They accused us of operating an unlicensed animal therapy center using Daisy as a cover, and included a threat, a $5,000 fine per day until we vacated the disputed acreage. Melissa read the letter out loud at the kitchen table, her voice cracking on every line. Luke sat across from us, eyes wide, his fingers tightening around the notebook he hadn't let go of since the fire. They're trying to make it all disappear, Melissa whispered. Everything. Daisy, the land, even Luke's grief. But grief doesn't vanish just because someone puts it in writing. It festers. It sharpens. And in Luke's case, it lit a fire that burned cleaner than the one Karen poured gasoline on. I want to speak at the town meeting, he said. The words fell into the room like a stone into still water. We both looked at him, unsure we'd heard right. You want to what? Melissa asked softly. I want to tell them what happened to Daisy, he said, eyes steady. If they hear it from me, maybe they'll understand. I felt a lump rise in my throat, the kind you swallow not because you have to, but because if you don't, you'll break. Then we'll be right there with you, I said. The next morning, I called a meeting. Officer Ray came. Stephanie brought her laptop, full of emails Karen thought were deleted. Ted, our neighbor and a former land surveyor, showed up with maps and plat diagrams. I need proof, I told them. I need to show that our ranch was never part of this HOA fantasy land. Ted unrolled a large document across the table. You're in luck, he said. This ranch? It's not even close to the original HOA zone. Karen drew her own lines. What she did is not just unethical. It's illegal. And dumb. Stephanie nodded. With the emails and the footage, she's toast. But then Ray leaned in, voice quieter. You need to be ready for pushback. She's not done yet. He wasn't wrong. An hour later, one of our other neighbors, Clara, from 2 roads over, ran up the driveway breathless. She called an emergency HOA vote, she panted. The topic? Seizing your land through a community motion. She wants to evict you by vote. It's tonight. I looked at Melissa. Then it ends tonight. We packed up our evidence, loaded into the truck, and drove toward the HOA clubhouse. I had no idea what we were walking into. The parking lot overflowed. Cars lined the street like a circus had come to town. Inside, voices buzzed like a hive about to swarm. Luke sat in the back seat clutching his notebook, his flannel shirt clean, his boots dusted. He looked small, but not weak. You ready? Melissa asked. Yes, he nodded. Let's do this. But as we approached the entrance, a tall man in a gray jacket stepped in front of us, HOA badge around his neck. Minors aren't allowed to speak tonight, he said. Emergency bylaw passed this afternoon. You're kidding, I said. He's here to tell the truth. You're afraid of a 10-year-old? Rules are rules, he replied. That phrase again. Karen's poison. Just then she appeared. Sunglasses perched high. Smile like syrup. Let's not make a scene, she purred. We wouldn't want the child to feel overwhelmed. Luke stepped forward, past me, chin raised. I'm not overwhelmed, he said. I just want to talk about Daisy. Karen crouched to his eye level. Sweetheart, she said with false sweetness. It was just a pony. Melissa gripped his shoulder and pulled him gently back. Go inside, Dad, she said. We'll wait here. I entered the building alone, heart pounding. Karen was already at the podium, speaking like royalty addressing her court. Due to repeated violations, she said, unauthorized structures, and the recent fire hazard, we propose an emergency injunction to reclaim this land under HOA jurisdiction. All in favor? Hold it, I said, my voice cutting across the room. Heads turned. A hush fell. I walked forward, slow, deliberate, holding a stack of documents and a flash drive. I have proof, I said. This HOA has no legal claim over my land. And this woman, Karen Whitman, falsified maps, distributed fake permits, incited trespassing, and is directly responsible for arson. Karen laughed. Are we really going to let baseless accusations derail a lawful vote? They're not baseless, said a voice from the back. Stephanie. I was on the board. I saw the emails. She bribed us. She bullied people into silence. I've got the maps, Ted added, holding up his binder. They show exactly where the HOA ends. And the Harding Ranch isn't anywhere near it. Then Officer Ray stepped inside, in uniform, holding a folder. I'm with the Sheriff's Department, he said, raising the flash drive I gave him. We're launching a full investigation. Anyone who votes with her tonight could be implicated in a federal fraud case. The room froze. Karen's face paled. You can't prove. Oh, but we can, Ray said calmly. And we will. The HOA president, a timid man with thinning hair, slowly stood. I think we need to postpone the vote. Until a full review. You cowards. Karen shrieked. You're all letting him manipulate you. Someone near the back shouted. You lied about the map. Another yelled. You told us they were squatters. Chaos erupted. The president banged his gavel. Meeting adjourned. Karen stormed toward the exit, but Ray stepped in her path. Not so fast. You're under investigation. Outside, Luke was waiting on the steps. Did it work? He asked. I dropped to one knee, hugged him close. Better than we hoped. He smiled. Not big, not loud, but real. And then the flood came. Over the next few days, residents came forward, stories, complaints, years of abuse. Karen had fined a veteran for flying the wrong flag. Tried to evict a couple over their garden colors. Shut down a birthday party because the balloons were too loud. But the most damning came from Ed, a board member who'd resigned 2 years ago. He brought a recording. Karen's voice clear. The ranchers don't matter. We'll make life hell until they sell. Just imagine a golf course where that pasture is. A yacht club at the creek. She hadn't just overstepped. She'd orchestrated everything for profit. 2 weeks later, Ray came to our porch with a paper in hand. It's done, he said. County DA is moving forward. Fraud. Conspiracy. Arson. She's going to court. Melissa gasped. Luke jumped from the swing. But Ray raised a finger. One more thing. She filed a counterclaim. Says Luke slandered her. Emotional distress. She's suing a 10-year-old? I asked, jaw clenched. Desperate, Ray said. But we're not letting it slide. I looked across the pasture where Daisy once grazed. She took his horse. Tried to take his voice. But now the world was listening. Because the next town council meeting wasn't at the HOA clubhouse. It was at the Civic Center. With cameras. With reporters. And the first name on the speaker list? Luke Harding. And this time, no one was going to stop him. The Civic Center was already full when we arrived. It wasn't even sunset yet, but the parking lot overflowed with cars, news vans lined the street, and people stood shoulder to shoulder outside the entrance, craning their necks just to catch a glimpse through the windows. The air buzzed with anticipation, not the idle kind that fills sports games or parades, but the heavy kind, the kind that hangs over a courtroom just before a verdict. Inside, every seat was taken. Teenagers with protest signs, elderly ranchers in denim and dusty hats, parents with their kids clutching plush ponies or photos of lost pets. All of them had come for one reason. They weren't here for Karen. They were here for Luke. My son sat in the front row, wearing a clean white button-up and his best pair of scuffed brown boots. His notebook, the one he'd filled with every memory of Daisy, was clutched in both hands. Melissa sat beside him, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. I stood behind them, flanked by Ted, Stephanie, and Officer Ray, all of us silent as the mayor stepped to the podium. Tonight, the floor will be open for statements from citizens, he said. Due to the nature of recent events, we are beginning with the registered speakers. First up, Luke Harding. The room went still. Not quiet, still. As if the very air had frozen. Luke stood slowly. He looked small up there, barely reaching the microphone, but when he unfolded his notebook and looked out over the room, his voice was steady. My name is Luke Harding, he began. I'm 10 years old. I live on the ranch that HOA Karen tried to steal. A few people chuckled nervously, but Luke didn't. He turned a page. I had a miniature horse named Daisy. She wasn't just a pet. She helped me talk when I didn't want to. She made me feel safe. I used to be scared to go to school, scared to talk to people. But with Daisy, I could do anything. His voice trembled for a second, and I saw his fingers tighten on the page, but he didn't stop. One day she was grazing near the fence. And someone, Karen, led onto our land, shot her. They said she looked like a deer. But she wasn't. She was wearing her pink halter. She was standing still. And they shouldn't have been there. A murmur rolled through the crowd, but no one interrupted. No one moved. When she died, I didn't want to talk anymore, Luke said. I didn't even want to feel anything. But then we built her a memorial. I painted her name. I sat with her saddle. It helped. Until someone burned it down. They poured gas on it and lit it on fire. Gasps echoed. One woman wiped her eyes. A man in the back crossed his arms, jaw clenched. I know who did it now, Luke said. And I'm not here to be mean. I just want people to know the truth. I don't want this to happen to any other kid. Or any other animal. Please don't let people like her keep doing this. He stepped back. For a moment, there was only silence. Then one clap. Then two. And in seconds, the entire room stood up, erupting in applause so thunderous it shook the glass panels on the back wall. Luke's cheeks turned red, but he smiled, proud, real. Melissa hugged him as he sat back down. I bent over and whispered, "You were louder than every lie she ever told." Across the room, at the very back, Karen sat stone-faced in a beige pantsuit that clashed with her usual pastel armor. Her eyes were thin slits. She didn't speak. She didn't move. For once, she didn't dare. That night, the speech went viral. Local news aired it on the evening report. By morning, it had spread online, reposted, subtitled, dubbed in different languages. Messages poured into our inbox from strangers offering to donate animals, fencing, even legal assistance. A woman from Michigan sent a miniature saddle. A veteran from Texas sent a check with a note. For a real hero. Then the phone rang. It was our attorney. "Karen dropped the counterclaim," he said. "Too much pressure. Public's not on her side anymore. Her lawyers told her to back off before it gets worse." I laughed for the first time in weeks. Not because we'd won, but because it meant she finally understood we weren't going away. That weekend, we rebuilt Daisy's memorial. But this time, we didn't do it alone. Mr. Clay brought fresh cedar beams, stronger than the first. Ted installed solar lights that glowed soft blue in the dark. Stephanie painted a new sign, "Daisy, Forever Our Light." The Monroe twins planted wildflowers around the base, and other kids from the neighborhood brought hand-painted rocks, tiny letters, little toys. One boy, maybe 7, left a stuffed foal with a note taped to its back. "Thank you for helping us be brave." Luke led the ribbon-cutting ceremony. He said a few words about Daisy. Nothing scripted. Just honest. That's all it took. But just as the air began to settle again, the past rose once more, this time, in the form of a black SUV. It pulled up to our gate late one afternoon, tires crunching slowly over the gravel like a warning. A tall man in a navy blazer stepped out, no smile, no hesitation, just a flash of a federal badge. "Mr. Harding?" he asked. "Yes. We need to talk. It's about the hunting permits." "The fake ones Karen printed?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, but there's more. We've uncovered records showing she sold over 60 unauthorized access licenses to hunting groups across multiple states. That qualifies as organized land fraud, and your ranch is now considered federal evidence." Melissa stepped out, instinctively putting a hand on Luke's shoulder. The agent saw her and added, "You may need to appear as key witnesses in several hearings. Also be aware, some of these groups believe they still have valid claims to this land." "You mean people she lied to?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "But some of them paid thousands. They feel cheated. And dangerous people don't always aim at the person who scammed them. They aim at whoever's still standing in their way." That night, I reinforced every gate, every camera, every barn door. I placed a shotgun by the front entrance, not because I wanted to use it, but because the next time someone tried to take something from my family, they were going to have to look me in the eye first. The morning after that, it happened. A convoy of pickup trucks pulled up along the back field. 5 men stepped out in full camo, each holding a printed permit. "We're here for the season hunt," one of them called out. Karen said this was public green space. I stepped out, alongside the sheriff, Ray, and the federal agent. "That permit's a fake," I said. "This land is private. Always has been." One of the men stepped forward, red-faced and furious. "I paid $8,000 for access here. I want my money or my hunt." "You paid a con artist," the agent said. "And you're lucky we're not arresting you for trespassing. Walk away." There was a pause. Tension pulled taut like wire. Then finally they backed down. But as they drove off, one man leaned out his window. "This isn't over," he spat. "Maybe not. But we were ready. And we weren't alone anymore. Because Karen hadn't just attacked us. She'd awakened something deeper, a network of people who were tired of being stepped on. And for the first time, she was finally the one looking over her shoulder. 6 months after the Civic Center meeting, the Harding Ranch didn't just recover, it transformed. The ashes of Daisy's first memorial had given birth to something no one, not even us, could have predicted. It began with the letters. They came from everywhere: parents, veterans, teachers, kids, people who had never met Daisy, who had never set foot in our county, but who saw something in Luke's speech that echoed in their own lives. "Your son reminded me what courage looks like," one letter read. Another, from a woman in Oregon, said, "I lost my therapy cat in a similar way. I didn't have the strength to fight, but now I do." Local officials, some of whom had once dismissed our concerns, began showing up with apologies, offers, and new policies. But the most unexpected change came in the form of a proposal from a national nonprofit, the Animal Therapy Foundation. A team of suited representatives drove in from out of state, walked our land, visited Daisy's new memorial, and then sat down with us in the barn under the late afternoon sun. "We've been looking for a pilot site," their leader said. "Somewhere peaceful, authentic, where kids and families can reconnect with animals and themselves. Your ranch, your story, it moved us. We'd like to help you build something bigger." Melissa's hand flew to her mouth. Luke blinked. "You mean like a real program?" "A fully funded one," the man replied. "Staff, training, insurance, legal protections, and long-term investment. We want to make this permanent." That night, around the dinner table, Luke whispered, "Would it still be called Daisy's?" I looked at him. "What do you want it to be?" He thought for a moment. "The Daisy Strong Foundation," he said. "Because she made me strong. And I want other kids to feel that too." 3 months later, we opened the gates. Kids from every corner of the county, and beyond, came to the ranch. Some had anxiety. Some had lost family members. Others just needed quiet. They brushed ponies, planted flowers, painted signs, and sat by the creek where Daisy used to drink. Luke, now a little taller, a little braver, took it upon himself to lead the first sessions. He taught one girl, whose brother had died in a car crash, how to brush Buttercup's mane. He showed a boy who never spoke how to whisper to a miniature donkey named Jasper. One afternoon, while painting fence rails, Luke turned to me and said, "I think Daisy would like this." I nodded. "I think she already does." But the peace, as we learned long ago, was always fragile. It came back not as a fire or a bullet, but through a manila envelope stuffed with legal jargon. Inside was a letter from a corporate law firm representing a newly formed development company. They claimed to have purchased rights to land adjacent to the old HOA, land they insisted included a section of our pasture. They enclosed a cease and desist order demanding we halt all unauthorized animal programming and remove all unapproved structures from what they referred to as the future Hillside Estates Recreation Reserve. I read the document 3 times. Melissa read it once, then sat down hard. "They're trying again," she said. "Only this time with more money and better lawyers." I called Ted. I called Officer Ray. I called Stephanie. We gathered in the barn, surrounded by walls now lined with crayon drawings from kids and laminated thank you letters. "This time," I said, "we go to war with paperwork." Ted pulled out updated land plats. "They're bluffing," he said. "This company bought fake entitlement rights based on the same forged maps Karen made. They don't have a square inch of this land. But we need to make it loud and public." So we did. 3 days later, with cameras invited and news stations present, we held a press conference in front of the new memorial arch. Luke stood by Buttercup, looking more like a young man than a boy now. "This ranch belongs to my family," he said into the microphone, "and to the kids who come here to heal. It doesn't belong to any HOA or company or fake permit. It belongs to everyone who believes little things can make a big difference." The video went viral again. This time not because it was heartbreaking, but because it was triumphant. And within 48 hours, the development company retracted their claim. Public pressure, legal documents, and the quiet fury of a community, no longer asleep, forced them to step back. Weeks later, we received an official letter from the county courthouse. The Harding Ranch had been granted special status, a protected agricultural and therapeutic zone. No HOA, no hunting, no development. Ever. The final page of the document included a single sentence: "In honor of Daisy, the miniature horse, and all those like her who help heal what cannot be seen." Melissa wept when she read it. Luke framed it and hung it in the barn, just above Daisy's photo. Underneath, on a wooden plaque carved by hand, we etched the words that had changed everything. "Even small voices can be loud when they're telling the truth." 1 year after Daisy's death, we held a candlelight vigil. Dozens came. Some brought flowers, others brought animals. One woman arrived with a pony named Willow who had helped her daughter walk again. A veteran brought his service dog and placed a medal beside the memorial. Luke stood at the front with Buttercup and read a short note. "Daisy showed me that small things can change the world. So I'm going to keep trying to do the same." And I hope you will too. As candles flickered in the night, the crowd softly began to whisper her name. Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. Far away, in a federal facility with no windows and no pastel sun hats, Karen watched the broadcast from a small mounted screen. Her eyes, once smug and unflinching, were dull now. Her mouth didn't move. For the first time in her life, no one was listening to her. They were listening to the boy she tried to silence. And that was the loudest justice of all.